Right. Okay. So, welcome to the next video. And this one is going to be interview prep to go. The aim of this video is not to bore you with how to do interviews, but actually give you a framework, a structure that you can follow very easily, where the next interview will be an absolute breeze. Hence why I've called it interview prep to go. It's going to be nice and easy, nice and quick, nice and simple, and you'll be able to utilize it very effectively. So, with interviews, the main reason people struggle with interviews is because there's zero structure. They don't know what to say, when to say it, who to say it to, if it's a panel interview. And also, they don't know how to finish an interview properly. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. So there's 4 points in this video. First point will be how to answer the very scary question of tell me about yourself, which is where everybody seems to stumble nowadays. So that's the first thing. The second thing is how to answer questions with confidence. So think about the questions you know the answer to, but for some reason, there's just no confidence to explain them in a structured way. Point 3 is how to answer questions you do not know the answer to. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer on this one. Companies know if you don't know the answer most of the time. They will still ask you questions they think you don't know the answer to test how you handle pressure, what resilience you have. That's very important for companies to know, and they'll test you on that. And the fourth thing, which I'm going to leave towards the end, is arguably the most important thing, which is how to finish an interview via the questions you ask. I literally have this as a premium video on the platform in a little bit more detail than what I'm going to share it as, but I'm going to give you the baseline so you know how to handle yourself. And this way, in your next interview, you will find it like a walk in a summer's park. Okay. So that's what we want to be able to do. So, point number 1. Tell me about yourself. I'm going to tell you where most people go wrong, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do to be able to effectively sell yourself better when answering this question. So you walk into an interview, you're nervous, you don't know if you're going to get the job, you really want the job, and you don't know, what to say and what they're going to ask you, and then they tell you or they ask you. So tell me about yourself. Talk me through your CV. What makes you you, or a variation of tell me about yourself. And then what people tend to do is they start really, talking about everything and anything, and then they end up talking for 5-10 minutes. Well, this is what I do. This is the Netflix shows that I watch, and I'm really passionate about this industry. I love your company, blah, blah, blah. And then before you know it, you talk for so long, the interviewer kind of thinks, well, I was going to ask this person about this question, and they don't. And then they've already made up their mind if they're going to hire you. So you get 0 points. What you need to do to have a structure, you need to think about 3 things when someone asks, tell me about yourself. First thing is, you want to focus on the academics. I'm a recent graduate of, or I graduated from. That's the first thing. The second thing is your current experience. So I'm currently doing this, or my current experience is ABC. And then the third point is, and this is what brings me here today, and this is why I'm interviewing at your firm today. So number 1, academics. Number 2, current experience. Number 3, this is what brings me here today. So I'm a recent graduate of University XYZ, where I have been learning ABC. I've been doing this, this, and this at this university. My current experience, where I'm working at the moment, is company ABC. My current responsibilities are XYZ. This is what I like to do in the role that I'm in. And this is what brings me here today, because your company is my first choice, and I'm excited to learn if I'm going to be an adequate fit and to learn more about the company. Now, that took about a minute and a half, and that's a good baseline to begin from. You do not need to complicate this. You need to keep it simple, because the interviewer that's interviewing you, they might have a follow-up question about your academics or the experience or why you really want to work in that company. So if you keep your answer short and sweet, they will then comfortably follow up by saying, that's great, I love the experience, but tell me, why do you want to work here? What's the reason you want to work at this company? And you just give them enough time to be able to comfortably ask you that. So if you rush it and you talk for a lot longer than you need to, they might not ask you that follow-up question, and that follow-up question might be the real reason as to if they will hire you or not take things further. So that's point number 1. Tell me about yourself. Point number 2, answering questions with confidence. So the interviewer asks you a question that you've probably, memorized and tested in front of the mirror, or you've taken a selfie video of how you're going to answer this question with absolute confidence. And then they ask you the question, and you freeze and you think, I know the answer, but I can't actually give a structure to this. What do I do? there's two things you can think about. The first thing that everybody should know is something called the STAR method. This is a structured answer, and I'll do a really detailed video on this. But the STAR method is situation, task, action, result. That is what most companies effectively want you to explain your answers that you have experience with in that way. So this is the situation. This is the task that I have in front of me. This is the action that I took, and this is the result that I generated. Now, the problem with the STAR method, my personal problem with it, if you're in an interview, you have nerves, you forget what STAR means. And then you think, what was that? Start, action, result, where's the situation again? That's what literally happens when your heart starts to flutter and then you start to think, okay, am I going to remember or memorize all of this? Okay. So STAR is a little bit tricky. But what you should really think about is logic and benefit. The companies want to know if you have a logical answer and then a benefit to how you would actually do the job. So if you have logic, you have a logical experience. Hey, I've done this before. But the benefit is how I would do the job. What the benefit would be if you were to hire me. Now, if you highlight the benefit in doing the job, what you'll notice is that that's the buying button that companies really want to hear from you to actually want to give you the job. Okay. So logically, I've done the job. Great. That's situation, task. The action and the result, the benefit you bring, that's what companies really, really look at. So that's really, really important to think about. Then the next thing, the company asks you a question that you do not know the answer to. You start to panic. You start to sweat. You start to think, okay, what am I going to say? Am I going to just fib, lie, waffle, talk about something completely different in the hopes that they're going to offer you the job? Probably not. I don't recommend it. Don't think it's going to work. But what you should do when a company asks you directly about an experience you do not have or a question with an answer that you cannot build into the experience that you can bring, you have to be very direct. And you want to positively affirm the question they ask you. Hey, that's a great question. I'm glad you've asked me that. I do not have direct experience with that particular area, but I'm really excited with the potential to gain exposure and hit the ground running and learn more about it. This is one of the reasons that this company and role is my first choice. So think about how positive that is rather than what most people do, which is, oh, I don't really, I've got this other thing, but this transferable skill I have is like, stop. Companies are testing to see how you handle pressure. The answer that I've given is very confident, even though I don't know what the answer is. It's a confident structure to say I don't know the answer. However, I'm very excited at the prospect of learning what the answer could be if I have the opportunity to join the role. So that's number 3. Number 4, the questions you ask at the end. If you get to the end of the interview and the interviewer says, do you have any questions for us? And you say no, you have automatically lost the interview. You're not getting the job. Just walk out of there thinking, yep, I messed that up. So definitely ask a question. You have to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you just seem like you're just uninterested. It's not going to be the right fit. You've got all these other things in your mind and you're not taking it seriously. So that's where you lose. So don't do that. What you should do is you want to ask questions that you can validate too. Interesting questions that they have not thought about. And then once they give you an answer to your question, that you can validate into it. So you can kind of stick to it. Let me give you an example. Here's a very interesting one I've asked my students to ask at the end of interviews, and it's been very, very well received. So here's your question that you can ask. Let's assume that you offered me the job and we fast forward 12 months. How do you know that I was the correct hire? It gets the interviewer to think a little bit differently. Oh, wow. Okay. So this person's thinking about what I would want to look for. So let's assume you offered me the job and we fast forward 12 months. How do you know, or what metric would you use to know that I was the correct hire? The interviewer would then explain to you, okay, well, within 3 months, we expect you to do this. In 12 months, we wanted you to get to this level. In 6 months, this is the unique KPI we want you to know. Then you can say, fantastic. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Those are things that I thought about, especially the 6-month KPI. That's another reason I'm so confident about this role and that my ability to do the role is there. So you're sticking to it. Another question you can ask is specifically for the interviewer themselves. If you had to describe the company culture in 2 words, what would they be? Let's say the person says innovative and hierarchical. Fantastic. I'm so glad you've mentioned that. That's the company culture I'm looking for. Now, you have to be really careful not to just repeat yourself after each one of these. But what I'm trying to get at is you want to validate yourself the way you are effectively answering those questions as a loop, if that makes sense. So you ask a question, they give you an answer, and then you loop into it without sounding cheesy. Okay, so you want to think about that. So those are your interview preps to go. Now go there and do your interview thing and get the job. I'm rooting for you. I'll see you on the next one.